In this tutorial I will show how we can sculpt this leg. I will explain the main proportions of the leg, the main features we need to consider, what the main muscle groups are we will need to build up, and where the bones are visible at and we need to sculpt. And so we will derive at this leg, which looks quite rough still, but to show you that it is actually all we need, I show you this leg, which needed another 45 minutes to clean up. And when you look closely, I barely changed things. I just cleaned up all the forms, and you see we have all the main features exactly like the sculpt we did in the tutorial. So I hope you will enjoy this and you will join in, and I look forward to seeing you there. Thanks. Okay, so let's get started. As in every sculpt, we first study our reference material, which is in this case a sculpt of legs, a little exaggerated in the features I made, so that we can see clearly what we have to concentrate on. The first thing is that we need to learn about the proportions. That's the most important in the legs, and to do this I look at the legs from front and draw a center line here right at the knees. So I divide the knees and I draw the legs go up to this point here. This is the widest part, and here is actually a bony protrusion, which is the bone of the long, the top of the long bone within the leg. Okay, so and the legs go up to the inner ankle here, and when we see these both parts are the same length, so the upper leg and the lower leg have the same length. And if I divide these just once more like so, this height here is one head unit, and the height of the feet here is 1/4 to 1/3 of a head unit. Okay, so we need to know also how wide the legs are, and when we look here at the legs at the calf muscles, and when the legs are in a position like this but just touching, then this width here is about is about one head. So we can now from this sculpt a leg in the correct proportions. Another feature we really need to consider is when we look from the legs from the side view and we drop a line. So this is Control D. Control D. I drop a line vertically about like this. Then we see this is about the center line of the body in the side view, and we see the legs make an S curve. They are not straight like this line and vertically, but they make an S curve, and the lower legs are behind this vertical line. So this is important to get correct. And also we see how the feet are positioned in relation to this vertical line. So with this information now we can start sculpting our legs, and we go, let's remove this, go into our sculpt surroundings. So let's first go into edit mode, subdivide it a few times. Okay. And I think the screen recording is off again. Okay, so we have the screen recording so you can see what I'm doing. And we go into sculpt mode, make it a little wider so you can see, and we enable dynamic topology, pick the size, that's a little too big, make something like that, subdivide collapse on constant detail as always. And we look at the mirror settings. We know mirror settings. I just sculpt one leg and then the other can be mirrored with a mirror modifier. Okay, so the first thing is that we need to recreate this proportions, and to do so we can make these subdivisions here, and I go into orthogonal view and say in front view, and I first draw in with the grease pencil our subdivisions. Say here's the center line. Okay, the grease pencil is not enabled. Here's the center line. So for the knees, and say the head unit is for squares. So here's the ankle. Here's the knee. Oops. And again for units, and here is the top of the leg. Okay, so we need to arrange this, and when we have here our leg, I said here is one head wide over both legs, so one leg is about one half head, so it's 2 units wide, so we can draw it about here. It should be in front view about between these 2 lines. So now I go back into perspective mode for sculpting, and I can now with a snake hook brush pull out my leg, and we said also that in the side view we should make an S curve, so here we are about correct, so we pull this down here, make it even a little larger. Oops. A little larger. We pull it down about here to the ankles. Does not need to be pretty, about straight, and then we pull it up a little forward, not so crooked, something like that. You can do it in edit mode if you want to, but I show it this way because when we do a complete sculpt and you do not work from a base mesh but start afresh with a new sculpt, then you have to pull out your legs like I show you here. So I'm now concerned with this S curve and try to bring in just the side view curves we see here in this leg. Okay, so now let's look from the front view. We said the leg should stay within these boundaries here at this point about. Here's the knee. So let's draw in the knee just a little, so we have a visual indication. And now I try to match this elongated shape. So here's should be wider, and we see another feature I haven't mentioned. The legs look from front about like the letter B. So let's draw it on this leg here. We have like this, and the inside is more straight there are little bumps and so, but we see it's an elongated letter B, and the other leg is of course mirrored. So this is also a feature we should bring clearly in our outline. So I pull the leg now first to get this letter B form. Oops, undo. You see, sometimes I'm doing undo when I make mistakes like this, accidentally grabbing, but usually I don't, because I can make use of the mistake in taking it as a reference for knowing where the correct form should go. Okay, it's a little... Okay, so we need to extend it here, so I push this up. So this is the rim of the pelvis area, pelvis bone. And so let me make the ankles a little less wide. And for reference, let me pull out the foot just like this, not more, so that we can see where the foot will go, and that we can see which leg we are doing. So as I looked always here to this leg, I'm trying to make the left leg in the view, so the right leg of the person, and that means that here is the big toe. Let me smooth this a little, so we can see from this form where our foot would be. Pull it out here and here. So we have a very crude basic form for our foot, but that will do, since we have learned about the foot in the other tutorial. So just to make it just a little bit nicer. Okay, so that will do for the foot. Okay, so we know we have the basic forms and the basic proportions, and in the next video we will refine this. Okay, so before we want to now refine our basic sculpt of the leg, and before we can do this, we want to see more of these muscles. So I go back into this overview and I enable the drawing I made for the muscles, and we see, let's erase the grease pencil for a moment so that we can see better. And the first thing we need to consider when sculpting is which areas are hard and which areas are soft. The areas where the bones are close to the surface are hard areas, that is the knees, and everything I painted red. So the knees consist of two parts. The lower part of the long bone in the upper leg, it ends here, and it looks like three spheres attached, and the middle one is the kneecap, so to say, and it is very close to the surface, so it's very hard. And the other part is the bone in the one of the bones in the lower leg, the bigger ones, and that is actually a curved bone, like I drew here in red, and this is very close to the surface on its whole length, and at the knee, of course. And many people here on the side is also a part of the upper bone visible. I haven't painted this red here too. here this bone is visible at the surface, and from the pelvis rim we see parts here and also here at the back. Okay, we will not concentrate so much on this here in this tutorial. This will be for a later tutorial. So this is where the bones are visible, and the other colors are muscle groups. Again, I have not drawn every muscle, but collected them in groups that are important for us. From the front view, we see two muscle groups which are important. That is this orange muscle group, which is actually 3 muscles. When we look closely, we can see it that I sculpted actually 3 muscles, but we can handle this as one big muscle group, because when the person we sculpt is not so muscular, we actually will not see this division so clearly. Another very important one is this blue one, which starts here at the top of the leg and runs down at the side and then wraps around the knee here, and it attaches just under the knee. And why is this important? Because this makes a division in the leg we can see on most persons. So this makes a division in the form. So let's look at the back. At the back we see the calf muscles, and here's the important feature that the inner calf muscle is much bigger than the outer muscle. When we look from the front, we see this green here, so we see this inner calf muscle from the front, and when we rotate this, we see how big it is compared to the smaller other one. And another feature is that here's an angle, so this goes down to the half line of the lower leg, and this builds a slanted line together with this, so we have kind of distorted oval shape altogether. Okay, these two calf muscles go inside the division between these two pink muscles. Again, we will sculpt them as one muscle group that separates here to make room for the both calf muscle. And this whole hollow which is here, which is very important to get in the sculpt, is that the reason it is there is that we can bend the knee really up to 90 degrees. So we need this hollow here. So we should sculpt this because it has an important function. And these other muscles groups I draw here are not so important. They are not that much visible on most people. Okay, and of course we have to cap off the legs with the rear, and this is one big muscle group, and when we look, it is cylindrical in shape. Okay, so that's what we need to know, and now we can jump back into our sculpting surrounding and try to get these muscle groups and forms. And as I said, we will not sculpt it as exaggerated as this sculpt here, but more moderate. And so let's let's still the grease pencil so that we can see we are in line. So I start, say, with a kneecap, and let's make the detail size now considerably smaller, something like that, so that we can sculpt more detail. And I first make the separation, and when we look here from the side, the knee has a slant, so I add this and I add these. Oops, they should go further back. the sides. In the first pass we make it very rough, just enough that we see the features, and then in the second pass we refine them and make the sculpt more pretty. In the end we will not have a pretty leg here, but just a leg with all the essential proportions. So now I will create this bone inside. So I simply draw it onto my sculpt like this, like a C shape, and I push back a little of this area so that it stands out like it is here. And we need to add a little more mass here on the side. So I refine the forms while thinking on what it is that I'm refining. We don't consider the foot now, even though it looks ugly. Now let's indicate the calf muscles. We said they go to the halfway point. We have here our halfway point, and they are in the center. Our leg is a little crooked, I think. At the back it is a little crooked, so I grab it maybe a little smaller brush size and grab it just a little bit to make it straighter. So now we can draw in this division, and the toe is here, so we are sculpting this leg. So the slant should be something like that. And now I fill in, so this side here is where the toe is, that's the inside of the leg. So this muscle should be the bigger one, first exaggerated quite a bit, and the other is just barely indicated. And when we look here, we see it just goes down to the ankle. So let's quickly indicate that. The lower part is really messy here. I can't see this. Oops, there's, you see the other one. Okay, something like that. So we don't noodle too much on one part, but try to get the form about right in the first pass, and then move on. From the side view, the muscle should go something like that. Okay, and now let's first do the top muscles, since we just look at this. And I drew in the separation, just a little bit, and draw in the muscles, and then we see they wrap forward like this, and this wraps forward like this. And when we look now again, where is this division here where we haven't put in, then we see it's just a quarter about lower, so we should add a lot of material here. Okay. And we are doing this right leg. Am I right? This leg we are doing. This one. Yes. So we have to sculpt in this area. You see, sometimes it's a little difficult to get the orientation, but it is important that we think about it. Where is left and where is right? And in the beginning it's sometimes a little hard to see because the sculpt is still so rough, and then we need to take the time to. So it's rough, but we have the main cylindrical form, and now I indicate this important bone here. So I make about here, that's where this line is, this blob for the moment, blend it in a little more. So we have this about established, and for the upper part in the front we will do this in the next tutorial. Okay, so now we want to sculpt the front muscles, and as I said, the most important part here is this blue muscle. So I first draw in the separation where it runs about, and when we look closely we see that it starts to wrap it around to the side here about at the halfway point, so about here. So I start drawing in here, and then it should go to the side and wrap around the kneecaps. So it wraps around like this, and then I can sculpt in the actual muscle. So I add a little material, try to make the whole leg rounder while I do so, and here it should go. I haven't, as it looks like I have not enough width here. Yes, that's correct. So let's make this something like that. Push this a little further. My leg is not wide enough here on the top. Something like that on the other side too. We need a good cleanup in the end. As we see, it is quite messy now in the moment, but as I said, it is not so important that it's now pretty, but in the end it is important that the features are at the right place in the correct proportions about, and then we can go in and make it pretty, and then the sculpt will look good. When we on the other hand first concentrate on making every stroke pretty and neglect the structure, then the sculpt may look very refined, but when the basic structure is wrong, it will never look good. So the important is to get the structure correct, and even if the sculpt is rough, it will look good. And so that's why we concentrate more on this, getting the proportions and the forms correct, than making a pretty sculpt in the beginning. Later on, in the later state, of course, at some point we want to make it pretty. We don't want to have such a rough sculpt in the end. But for now it's really, you see, I start refining the shapes and look at my reference legs, and you see, we can see now this orange muscle group here in the top, in the front, and it should be just a little visible on the side, which it is. And then on the side is this big yellow thing that is not very pronounced, and you see now I just added this knowing that it is there, and it goes up to this bone here. And now let's make this a little more pretty. And now we are starting to make it more pretty, so I reduce the strength of my brush here so that I can make more subtle strokes. And here this division is very exaggerated, and we don't want to have this. It was just for getting the structure correct, so I fill this in mainly and leave just a little bit to indicate it so that we can see the structure. So it should wrap around, so I need to cut in a little. So let's remove now the grease pencil, we don't need it anymore. Our structure is solid now. We can see on our own sculpt where this proportions are, and we fix this in the beginning. Okay, let's see how it looks here. This yellow is coming down here at the side, and we need to work a little more on our kneecap. When we look here, it should go not so abrupt, but blends in better, so I add more. Yes, and now it should blend in better with in the muscle, and I cut in this triangular division we see faintly see here to make it a little more clear where the bone is, and try to get the form. And when we look now here, the middle part is lower than the side sphere, so I need to push this up a little. And this also, so this looks good. And this muscle here is coming around. And now the lower part. Here's a division very clearly visible. These two spheres at the side. So we can learn, if we want to, of course, the names of all these bones, but we don't have to. We just need to know which parts of the bones are important for us when we sculpt, and which parts are not so important. And that's all we need to know for sculpting. We don't need to know. We can, if you like that, you can learn the names, and it's great if you can, but it's not really necessary for sculpting. Okay, I think my kneecap is a little on the wide side, so I remove a little here. And now let's blend in this bone here a little more, and for that I round off the sides here a little. Not too much, we want to see this depression here. Oops, so and I try to blend it in with the sides. This is the big calf muscle here, and I try to establish a form. Let's see if we can see it. Yes, here you can see the form of the muscle, and it should go to here. And when you like, you can also use for this kind of work, for establishing the forms, you can use a scrape brush too. That's great for this job too. I do sometimes with a scrape brush, and sometimes today I'm in the mood for the clay strips brush. It's actually my most favorite brush anyway Blender has, and to me this this brush is better than any brush ZBrush has. Okay, so this was a little product placement. I'm sorry. Okay, so you see our leg gets more refined. We're still not there. It's a little crooky here on the lower part. We need to fill in a little of this violet muscle, so I need to add a little more material here on the side to fill in the empty spots here, and the bone is about here. Let's blend in just a little bit so it looks a little better. So now let's make a few strokes to get this more correct, and see, I try to make my strokes in the directions of the muscles, as this will build then a more even surface in the direction it needs to be even. So I fill in now this gap here more, as this is not so visible in most people, just that we see it just a little bit. And again fill in here the rough transitions, and you see now that we kind of erase the crude and rough forms. We erase also the exaggeration, but the main forms now are in place. Here we should show that this goes inside, so and this also goes inside from this side, and we should see this hollow I mentioned, and now we do. And let me see, here's a little boxy. It shouldn't be boxy anywhere. The body is nice organic shape, so we shouldn't see corners. And we rotate and rotate, and the muscles should look straight in this pose. So I go over the sculpt. Let's erase this division here even more. Okay, so let's see. It still is not really clean sculpt, but we have all the features in place. Let's do this just for the, so when we look here we can see I indicated how the muscles run. So I try to make this in my sculpt now too, and this goes a little lower like this. Soften the transition here, and now you see we are coming along nicely, and it blends in now with this bone and makes this little bump we can see when you look at your own leg. You see there this little bump, not too hard, but it is visible. So I exaggerated a little the rim here because it's a pelvis bone, and this is usually a little more visible. Okay, so let's see how we made it. I think the foot is I'm not so happy with the form here. Let me add just a little more here. It should blend in better. We should see still the angle I spoke about, but here's material missing, I guess. Yes. Here it goes a little less wide, and then goes into the Yes, that was pretty good. Let's clean up this just a little. Okay, that was good. And the transition here is still not, it's too sharp. You see, we know what we need to see. We need to see this angle, so we need to make the form showing us this angle, because that's an important feature, as I said in the beginning. And we try to adjust. Yeah, now it looks much better. It is a little on the slim side from the side view, but just a little bit. Let me see. Yes, I want to push this up a little, as it's a little too low. So I use my snake hook brush and make it a little larger and push this up ever so slightly. And I now can also here work a little on this S curve, just a little bit, and here's should go just a little bit further. And from this view I think we got it pretty well. Okay, so this finishes off the tutorial. We have sculpted a leg in the correct proportions. It's still rough, but now it is in a state where we can make a retopo of it and make it a nice finished leg. All things are in place correctly, and we observed the main features. And I think I stop here, and I'm looking forward to your sculpts of the leg, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you back in the next tutorial. Thanks.